Hello everyone! Welcome School Year 2020-2021. I'm Teacher Jarson and this is your first video lesson in General Mathematics for Grade 11. Enjoy! Our lesson for today is a review at the same time an extension of the functions learned in junior high school. Specifically, we have to represent functions through mappings, graphs, and equations. Next, we should be able to differentiate functions from mere relations. And finally, represent real-life situations using functions including piecewise. We've been talking about functions and relations since junior high school. Can you still remember how to differentiate the two? By the way, how do you spell Philippines? Did I spell it right? I spell it that way since Philippines is a country of hogotero at magaling sa pick-up line. Accordingly, don't be alone in this world full of alon. So if you wanna have fun, travel ka. Malay mo, makita mo yung the Juan. And may I suggest, unahin mo sa Dumaguete. Kasi Dumaguete, get me. Kaso, sa kakagala, anong napala natin? Kung hindi sunburn, sakit ng paa, masasaya, pero madalas, malulungkot na alaala. Dahil akala ko, Zambales lang ang may iba, ikaw rin pala. Nung nag-mountain climbing ako, tinanong ko si Kuya, Kuya, 10 minutes na lang po ba talaga bago summit? Sagot niya, Nako, 10 minutes na lang po talaga. Sagot ko naman, Kuya, marami nang nanloko sa akin, please lang, huwag ka nang dumagdag. Pero kahit nagsinungaling si Kuya Guide, kahit pagod na siya, at least di niya ako iniwan. At nung nasa summit na kami, doon ko na-realize na mas madali palang makahanap ng perfect view kaysa sa perfect relationship. Dahil sa panahon ngayon, ang daming pa-fall. To begin our review, would you mind thinking of the most meaningful yet hurtful relationship you had? And if you want to pause the video and take time sharing them to someone, feel free to do so. I believe they've been hurtful since they've been special and significant to us. Do you know that in mathematics we also have special relations? We call them functions. By the way, a relation is the mapping or pairing of input values with output values. We call the set of input values the domain and the set of output values the range. Just like any relationship which could be shown through letters, flowers, and chocolates, relation could be presented through the following. First, mapping. Second, equation. And the last one, through graph. So how is function special? A function is a relation associating a single output number for every input number. To illustrate the idea of a function, let me ask you, how would you use your calculator to look for the value of 3 squared? Exactly. The number you entered is the input number or x value, that is 3, and the result is the output number or y value, which is 9. Now, the idea of pressing x squared on our calculator illustrates function. Now let me check if you can still differentiate functions from mere relations. To help remember and understand functions, let's think of our input number or the x value as a letter and our output number or the y value as the mailbox. We said that a function is a rule that gives a single output number for every valid input number. Granting that our input number is a letter and our output number is a mailbox, let me ask you, can you have one letter going to 2 different mailboxes? Of course not. The message will not be delivered well because it will be torn. Can you have 2 different letters going to a single mailbox? Why not? The person might happen to receive 2 or even more letters In other words, ligawin. Just kidding. Now let us use the metaphor of receiving letters to identify if the following mappings are functions or mere relations. If -3 is mapped to 3, 1 is mapped to 1, 3 is mapped to 1, and 4 is mapped to -2, is the given mapping a function or a mere relation? You're right. It is a function since every input number is mapped onto exactly one output number. How about this? -3 is mapped to 3, 1 is mapped to -2, 1 is mapped to 1, and 4 is mapped to 4. Is it a function or a mere relation? Bravo! This is not a function but simply a mere relation. Input 1 is mapped onto both -2 and 1, and should it be a letter, the message will not be delivered well. Now let's exercise literally by standing if it is a relation and sitting when the given is a function. You heard it right. Stand if relation, sit if function. Good luck! For item number 1, 1 is mapped to 6, 2 is mapped to 2, 4 is mapped to 4, and 5 is mapped to 10. At this juncture, you should be standing because the given is a relation. 3 is not mapped anywhere. Remember, if you're a mailman, you should deliver all the letters. For the next item, 3 is mapped to 2, 1 is mapped to 6, 2 is mapped to 2, 4 is mapped to 4, and 5 is mapped to 10. Is it a function or a mere relation? Will you sit or stand? At this point, you should be sitting because the given mapping is a function. Not all boxes should contain mails, but all mails should be delivered. So it's okay if there is no value mapped to 8. Now, let's have graphs. Speaking of graphs, we cannot go away with René Descartes' Cartesian coordinate system. Remember that when labeling our quadrants, we do it counterclockwise. And the intersection of the two axes is called the origin. Do you remember plotting of points? From an equation, we will have several ordered pairs after substituting different values of x to the equation. And if we will plot all the points, we will form the graph of the equation. Now, how do we check if the given graph is a function or a mere relation? We use the vertical line test. If it is possible for a vertical line to intersect a graph at more than one point, then the graph is a mere relation. For example, given this graph here, and if we have a yellow line to represent the vertical line, and if we pass it through the graph, it is a relation because it intersected the graph at more than one point. The next one, on the other hand, is a function since the vertical line passed through the graph at exactly one point. Exercise time, you know the drill. If it's a function, you remain in your seats. If it's a relation, you stand. Graph number 1, function or mere relation? At this point, you should be sitting because it is a function. Next graph. Still, you are supposed to be seated because it is a function. Next graph. At this point, you should be standing because it is a relation. How about this graph here? This time, you should be sitting because it is a function. I believe that would be a comprehensive review. Now let's dig into our lesson today. Do you agree that before they let you take their pictures, they have to be in supermodel pose? So when we're asked to model, does it mean we will give our best shot and strike a pose? When modeling, it means representing real-life situations through functions. To To translate, we have to familiarize ourselves on how to translate words to mathematical characters, such as equal sign for is, J for Jardson, addition sign for sum, addition, and altogether. Meanwhile, subtraction sign for minus, difference, and diminished. On the other hand, multiplication sign for times and product, while division sign for quotient and ratio. Now let's dig into the first one. The sum of the ages of Mark and Sheila equals 47. We'll use M to represent Mark's age and S to represent Sheila's age. Since we're talking about sum, we use addition. Hence, our model will be M plus S equals 47. How about the next one? The speed of a moving object is given by the ratio of the distance covered by the object and the time spent. Let's use S for the speed, D for the distance, and T for the time. So what would be our model? Exactly, the speed S is equal to D over T, since ratio in symbol is division. Let's have the third item. The body mass index of a person is defined by the quotient of weight in kilograms and the square of height in meters. This time, you give our variables. Alright, did you say B for BMI, W for weight, and H for height? That's great! Although you can make use of other variables, but it would be easier to choose their initials. So what would be our model? Perfect! B equals W all over H squared. H is the only one raised to 2. Now, it will be your turn to represent the succeeding items. Pause the video after every item, represent, then play to check your answer. For item 5, the fee for hiring a guide to explore a cave is 1,000 pesos. Represent the amount to be paid by a member of the exploration. Pause the video. The model would be A equals 1,000 all over M, since the amount depends on the number of members in the group exploration. Did you get it right? How about number 6? The product of two consecutive integers is 20. Pause the video. The model would be P equals N times the quantity N plus 1. If we use N for the first number, then the next one is N plus 1 since they are consecutive. I hope you did great. How about item 7? A type of microorganism doubles in number after every second but stops multiplying after 7 seconds. Pause the video. Did you encounter difficulty in modeling item 7? That's okay. Item 7 requires more than one equation and we call such situation piecewise function. Piecewise functions are situations that can be modeled using 2 or more equations depending on the value of the input. To model the scenario of microorganism doubling in number after every second but stops multiplying after 7 seconds, we have to investigate by completing such table to recognize the pattern. Since it doubles after every second, we multiply the previous number by 2 to obtain 2, 4, 8, 16, 32, 64, and 128. After which, we stop multiplying beyond 7 seconds. Notice that the first 7 seconds could be modeled by M of S, meaning number of microorganisms with respect to time in seconds equals 2 raised to S. Meanwhile, beyond 7 seconds could be modeled by simply M of S equals 128 because the number is constant by then. Let's summarize the models by adding the restrictions using semicolon. Thus, the models are M of S equals 2 raised to S when S is less than or equal to 7 and M of S equals 128 when S is greater than 7. Let's have another problem. A jeepney ride costs 9 pesos for the first 4 kilometers and each additional integer kilometer adds 150 to the fare. We now investigate by completing such table. Notice that for the first 4 kilometers, the fare is constant. Therefore, it could be modeled by simply f of d, meaning fare in terms of distance, equals 9 pesos. Beyond 4 kilometers, on the other hand, will require 150 for every additional integer kilometer, so we'll have 1050, 12, 1350, and so on. This could be modeled by f of d equals 9 pesos plus 150 quantity d minus 4. We have to include minus 4 since that is where we start adding 150. Hence, the models in paying a jeepney ride are f of d equals 9 pesos when d is less than or equal to 4 and f of d equals 9 plus 150 quantity d minus 4 when d is greater than 4. To summarize our learning, try completing the following phrases. The first one is, to differentiate functions from mere relations given a mapping, one has to Very good! Next, to differentiate functions from mere relations given a graph, one has to Excellent! Finally, to represent functions, especially piecewise, a learner has to That's awesome! Now bring out a whole sheet of paper and answer the following. For test A, numbers 1 and 2, draw a mapping and a graph of a function apart from the given examples. Pause the video. Are you done drawing? For test B, identify if the given item is a function or a mere relation by writing the words function and relation. Number 3. Number 4. Number 5. And number 6. If you're not yet done, pause the video. For test C, you have to represent the following situations. Number 7, give a function that can represent the cost of buying meals if each meal is 80 pesos. Number 8, the volume of a rectangle is given by the product of its length, width, and height. Pause the video to complete the 2 tasks before proceeding to the next item. Wow, that was quite fast. Now this is the final item. For numbers 9 and 10, a tricycle ride costs 20 pesos for the first 2 kilometers and each additional integer kilometer adds 10 pesos to the fare. Pause the video to model the piecewise function. Congratulations ahead for completing the tasks independently and honestly. Now let's check your answers. For number 1, give yourself 1 point if in your mapping all inputs or letters are delivered and no single input is mapped to 2 outputs. Number 2, give yourself another point if your graph passed the vertical line test. Number 3, if you answered function, give yourself 1 point. Number 4, if you answered relation, that's another point. Number 5, if you answered relation, that's a correct one. Number 6, if you wrote their function, you did it right. For number 7, you deserve 1 point if your representation is C equals ATM. Should you buy 3 meals, it would be 80 times 3, which is 240 pesos. Another point for number 8 if your model is V equals L times W times height. The keyword is product, hence multiply all the dimensions to get the volume. For numbers 9 and 10, which is piecewise, you get 1 point for every correct equation. So the equations are t of k equals 20 if k is less than or equal to 2, and t of k equals 20 plus 10 times the quantity k minus 2 when k is greater than 2. I suppose you investigated like we did earlier to look for the equations to represent k less than or equal to 2 and another for more than 2 kilometers. How did you fare in the activity? Did you get at least 6? If it's lower than 6, I guess you have to repeat the video, ask someone's help such as your teacher or your parent, or refer to other references such as books and online materials. This concludes our first video lesson. Hope you had a good time. See you next week. God bless and take care. Bye-bye!